So here's the thing. You happen to be talking to someone about spiritual things and the word church gets dropped into the conversation. What happens next is amazing. For no sooner have you heard the word than the mind begins to retrieve a whole load of photographic memories, images that have the potential to stir up either a positive or a negative emotion. And it's these feelings that decide whether or not you store this word in a box marked like, dislike, or couldn't care less. All this because someone happened to mention the word church. You see, based on what we've seen, heard, or experienced, particular words carry a whole truckload of beliefs, ideas that affect the way we act or react. So when we hear a word like church, the brain automatically searches our memory bank to see where we filed it. And because it's stored away in our subconscious, most of us have already decided where it fits. For the cynic, who believes the church to be nothing more than a gathering of damaged individuals who need other like-minded people to prop them up, the word is probably already filed under the letter C for crutch. Whereas for the victims, the mere mention of church is enough to remind them of an experience they'd much rather forget. So for them, the word gets locked away in a dark room marked A for abuse. But that said, maybe you're one of those who prefer to park the word under the letter P for pressure, because it either reminds you of a well-meaning parent who pressured you to attend something you found boring, or a time in your life when you experienced the pressure to conform to a whole load of religious activities. Then again, you might simply be someone who chooses to dump the word church in a file marked M for miscellaneous, as you're not sure where this seemingly archaic, out-of-touch religious institution fits into a modern society. But no matter where your brain decides to store this word, one thing is certain. When the word church is dropped into a conversation, most people automatically think of a building, a place where Christians gather to perform religious routines. And as if to back up this belief, your mind has probably already retrieved a photo of a friend's wedding, a family christening, or a relative's funeral. A mental image that convinces you of the fact that whether it's a humble chapel or an enormous cathedral, church equals building. And for those brave enough to venture inside one of these places, they'll soon see that the variety is endless. From decor to the way of doing things, you pays your money and takes your choice. Whether you prefer your church to be more ancient than modern, structured or spontaneous, churches come in all shapes and sizes. While some will encourage you to participate, others will want you to sit still and watch a performance. And while some meet in historic buildings, others might use a school, hotel, or even a theatre. From preserving the past to presenting the future, today's church can take you from chorister to concert in the time it takes to travel down the high street of any major city. But whatever your image of church happens to be, perhaps the key question is, does my picture match what God had in mind when He said, "I will build my church"? Because maybe, just maybe, there's a difference. If you've ever played the children's party game called Chinese Whispers, you'll know that over time words get changed. One person whispers a simple message to someone else. They in turn whisper what they have heard to the next person, and so on down the line until the last player shouts out their version of what the original message is. Normally what happens is that things change in the retelling of the message. So what the final player shouts out, although amusing, is nothing like the original message. So when it comes to the word church, one has to ask, did something get lost in the translation? Go back to the original whispers of God found in the New Testament, and you'll soon realize that the word church has nothing to do with buildings. In fact, those who translated the English Bible might have been better to use the word gathering rather than church, Because what Jesus had in mind when he used the word wasn't a building, but the coming together of a radically new community. The crow and the rook might look alike, but both birds have one outstanding difference. The crow is a loner, while the rook is a bird who loves to associate with others of the same species. Some would argue that humans are more rook than crow-like, that deep inside us all there is this desire to belong, for people to believe in us and accept us for who we are. If time travel were possible, and we could go back to the 1st century and take a look at those early Christian gatherings, I think we'd be struck by their sense of community. The commonality of these like-minded people who gathered to worship God, pray, discuss the life and teachings of Jesus, eat meals, and share Holy Communion together. In many ways, these groups were like a family in which believers shared their life together like brothers and sisters, and leaders acted as spiritual parents, empowering people to live the Christian life. Often meeting in homes, these communities were a safe environment in which people were encouraged, cared for, and supported, a place where people were accepted for who they are and responded to with grace. Back then, these gatherings were fast becoming an alternative society to the world they lived in, a place where believers from different backgrounds could belong. Jews and Gentiles shared life together. Slaves could enjoy equality with non-slaves, and gender was not an issue. Not wanting to challenge or replace local government, these gatherings offered a transforming environment that mirrored the life and teachings of Jesus. Choosing to engage with, rather than separate from the outside world, these communities demonstrated God's love in a practical way. Together they continued the story of all that Jesus began both to do and teach, as they brought hope, help, and healing to a hurting world. So the next time the word church gets dropped into a conversation, and all kinds of images spring to mind, maybe we should listen again to the whispers of God, because as Christ followers, you don't go to church, you are the church.